Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready to stumble? So, yeah, I don't want to knock your laptop over. So first of all, thank you, Greg. Thank you, Tim, for hosting the wonderful Boston OG. Thank you to WorkAuto for supplying us with toys.
Yay!
That was
Yay,
really
WorkAuto!
kind. Haven't had a chance to say hi to you yet, but you're the man. This is going to make my cats very upset. My name is Ryan Spilken. I am a senior learning and development consultant with Adaptavist, but don't let the title fool you. I have close to a decade of experience with the Atlassian tools. I'd like to have a little bit of fun. And if any of you were here last month and you saw us do the panel, you'd be wondering, why is this guy talking about responsible anything? It's a valid question. So welcome. I really do enjoy coming to the Boston OG. I think we got a good thing going here. So let's talk about how we can improve the process of improving Jira for our users, right? And how we can do this in a smart, actionable, hopefully automated way. And this comes to you not just from me, but from the entire Adaptavist team. We're a bit like one of those mythical Greek monsters. You cut off one head and another one pops up, and we're all operating out of the same body. And it's very, very Lovecraftian and not all that great. But anyway, Nelson Jordan, the consultant who was going to be here today. Oh, you want me to stick it? Okay, I'll stick here. I like to wander. I got busy feet, you know.
Yeah.
Nelson, the consultant who was going to be delivering this speech today, and is a vastly knowledgeable gentleman who had a family emergency, so he couldn't make it. So I was already on my way, and they said, "Hey, you, do that thing." So here we are. So there's a few funny pictures in these slides that Nelson would be better at. I could give you a flavor of Nelson by doing the New York accent. It's very thick, but I'm going to skip it. All right, so we're all thinking of Nelson, but Nelson really likes this picture. I don't always test my code, but when I do, it's in production. What does that mean? Well, who here is a Jira administrator? Welcome to the club. How many times have you gotten a tap on the shoulder or an email that says, "Hey, would you just do this for me real quick?" And now, look, you don't have to raise your hand, you don't have to incriminate yourselves, right? But how many of you have done those changes? Just because. You did it, you raised your hand, look at you. Shouldn't have done that. But we do it, and then it comes around and bites us, right? Because something we didn't expect, something that wasn't tied, gets changed, and now you got somebody else who was not involved in that initial change at all, you got them hot, right? So testing in production is something that we've all done, we're all embarrassed about it, let's move on. So what we want to do today is bring forth a method where we can standardize, where we have a method, a process, and some controls in place so that when we change configuration, we're maybe not ticking off half of another building, of our team. We want to be something that is going to make changes easy, auditable, and successful every time. So that's what I'm here to try and talk you through. But how? It's a good question. If I was like black and white infomercial guy right now, I'd be pounding the keyboard and crying about Jira. How do I do it? How do I do it? Well, we need a few things to make sure that our changes are successfully done. First, we need to implement some strong principles and practices. Then, we need to make sure that the components for the solution are always in place and always maintained. And then lastly, I have no idea what presentation demo means, but I will take you through some screenshots. Nelson. All right. So principles and practices. It's not always easy to institute governance around something like this, especially in an institution where Jira has matured a little bit. Like a fine wine, it has become unable to be processed by a normal person. We've got a lot of things going on, but strong governance is important. And then implementing a methodical change management solution. One of the things that I've been recently introduced to through my excellent and reputable colleagues is actually using code repository to store your configuration for an auditable and traceable history of what's been done. And there's some tools that help you do that. And lastly, you want to make sure that there's some promotion controls in place. So, governance. How do you do good governance? Well, first, we would recommend common scheme sets. What's a common scheme set? Nobody? Okay. A common scheme set is a set of schemes that are related to a particular project type. All right? So, we've got developers. We give them the development project. The development project is based on these 7 or 8 schemes every single time. The HR projects are built around these 7 or 8 schemes every single time. There's no exceptions to this. This is how we maintain. When you start doing a ton of little schemes here and there for 1 or 2 little changes, before you know it, you're going to have a behemoth, Godzilla, tarantula monster thing, and it's going to be unmanageable. We don't want that. Standard nomenclature. So who here has made the same custom field in Jira twice? Field ABC, and then field ABC? Because you can do that. They let you do it. You can have 3 different fields in 3 different projects with the same name. Maybe don't do that. That's a terrible, terrible idea, and it's really going to affect your ability to effectively gather data and report. So, skip that. Configure your project template to each scheme set. That just goes back to the first point. Have a standard project that no one's using. It's the development project for my developers. It's the development project for HR. You should have this as an example that people can go and look at and say, yes, I like it, I'll take it. Standardizing and streamlining project configuration, creation. There are a few different ways that this can be handled. Right? You can do this, one, through just a change process. Somebody submits a request, they tell you what kind of project they want, I build the project using the schemes that I've determined, or it can even be automated with the proper tools. And then maintaining your common configurations. Look, nobody likes to clean their room, right? But we got a clean house. We got to make sure that these things are being kept in a neat and orderly fashion. Just put some time on your calendar, right? Failing to plan is planning to fail. So we have to identify the change that is needed, right? It's the circle of circles. We identify the change, we assess the needs, we get it approved, we implement it, and something that we miss out on a lot is following up. So we do the change, right? And we throw it over the wall and we say, thank you very much, have a great day. And then what? We do something else and we get lost up in our work. But what if that change isn't making the customer happy in the long run? Are we doing them a service? Are we making Jira any easier for them to use? Nah. So, follow-up is an essential part of change management and keeping things fresh. So here are some bullet points that pop up after I talk about them. All right, so we want to make sure that we are doing well-documented changes. I know, who loves documenting? It's weird. You guys were like raising your hand to admit that you made big mistakes, but you don't like document. Weird. Important to keep things in a single source. Make sure you have approvers. Now, I have been diving into this recently, and a lot of our folks have been talking about it. Configuration as code. So do we have any devs in the room? Okay, all right, you guys are raising your hand a little sheepishly, that's fine. You're okay. A little better, that's much better. And we know, and so even the non-devs in the house, you know that what Bitbucket does, right? Right? Kind of, you got some, okay, I got some nods, good. By keeping our change files in a source management bank, we are able to do quite a bit. We are able to automate and standardize. We're able to version our changes. We can trace our changes. We're able to smoothly promote changes. And we kind of get rid of the human element. Right? Well, I mean, the human element's the most important one, but we can get rid of the human element in making mistakes and implementing those changes. We can also do things like, make a pull request for a change, and then have that pull request reviewed. So a few things to keep in mind about this. we should automate as much as we can. I'll tell you about how Adaptavist likes to do that, and I think that a few of you will have a guess. I like this one a lot because I like to keep things simple. So keep it simple, silly, or keep it simple, silly, and make sure that you are testing throughout the entire process. The auditable bit here is important, but also fairly obvious. When you do it in source control, you are able to track those changes fairly easily. Promotion controls are also going to be pretty handy, right? Now, not everyone that you deal with is going to have three, or not you might not have 3 production environments, right? You might, or not production, excuse me. You might not have 3 different environments, development, staging, and production. You might just have a development staging server and a production server, right? But it's not a terrible idea to do your changes in your staging, test, and then automate the push over to your production server, and to have that final step have an approval in it. Are you sure? Are you really sure? Hold on a second. Have we talked about this? Are you sure? Okay, so this brings standardization. You can make notifications happen around these things. We have a change history built in, and it's repeatable. So now we've got some governance ideas. What all needs to be put together to make this happen successfully? Well, a solid change request form, staging of the changes, approval, and then a push. So we start with submitting the change request. How would you do this? Does anybody have any ideas? Have you heard of this product that has been storming the market lately? Jira Service Desk. What if you just had a service desk project that was devoted to Jira? Weird, it's meta too. Speaking of which. So, we have a Jira change request. We put it in. What's going to happen? Well, what change do you want? What projects need to be changed? Why are you going to change these? Don't you like us? And then who is set to approve this change? And then we stage, right? And then we build out the change on the staging instance. And we do that with a well-formed plan for what needs to be done. We need to make sure that the changes that are happening, look, there's 2 levels of risk assessment that we should be going through in our heads. First of all, what's this going to change on the user side, right? Sometimes that's really minor, but other times that can be really big. Whereas on the other side, the second thing that we need to keep in mind is that, is this going to affect anything on the business side? Because that's a big no, right? But these are things that we need to think through and be sure that we are tracking. And speaking of which, let's track changes. We'll use a version control for that. We have our history. We can then validate the changes, and then we push. What's really important that with this whole step, with this whole piece, is that your staging instance is not a dilapidated ghost town. All right? Because you can make changes on staging and everything is going to work perfectly, but if there's no data in fields or if there's nothing there, of course it's going to work perfectly. Why wouldn't it? And then you're going to go to production and be like, what happened? So we don't want to be there, right? So we want to make sure that we are keeping our staging instance up to date. If that involves occasionally just trashing it and then restoring it from a backup of production, so be it. All right, so configuration changes in your staging instance. This could be any number of things. You're just adding an issue type or tweaking your workflow or updating a screen, introducing versions or components, which your project administrators should be trained to do. And if you need help training your project administrators, come talk to me. I know a thing or two about training Jira. All right? And so in our example, we're actually going to look at service desk. We're going to do a service desk kind of change. We want a, what we're looking for in here, we're looking for a new queue. Whoa, I thought it was going to keep zooming on us and crush me. So once we are able to test and everything's approved, and I really believe in this, because one of the most common things that I have heard in my time as a Jira administrator is, wait a minute, that's not what I asked for. Have you Have you done that? That's not what I asked for, but we talked. Yes, it is. So have somebody sign off on their changes. Use SmartDraw or whatever your favorite document, whatever your graphing program is, to make a flow chart and make somebody sign off on it on the Confluence page. Just be like, yes, this is what I want. And then when they say, this isn't what I wanted, you can go back to that page and be like, show me where the diagram touched you. And again, we're able to beautifully use Jira to actually have an approver. In Jira Service Desk, you can build in an approval step. It's easy to do. The sample workflow for an approval does not need to be complex. This whole thing can be very simple. It's waiting for testing, we're testing it, we're waiting on approval, it's been approved, we're done. All right, and then we push. So why are we having so many changes? And what is wrong with this guy? What era do you think he's from? I'm gonna go with the mid-90s. Anyone? Anyone? Okay, mid-90s you think? Good. Well, what's the one thing that could derail after we've done all this great preparation? What can derail us? Fat, stupid fingers, right? One small mistype could result in a major error. So, what do we do? What are we missing here? We're missing Elon Musk's best friend, the robot, right? So, in order to remove the human element, we need to do some automation in this process. Back in the day, you know, when I was a boy, manual changes were expensive and time-consuming and costly, right? Because maybe if we made a mistake, we had to peel back the onion to find where the mistake was. And in the case of the Model A, well, have you ever worked on a classic car? Because I haven't. I have no idea what that has to do with anything. But here, this is what the automobile factory floor looked like 100 years ago, right? And standardization changed the world in that case. And you could say that if you were to do a manual Jira change, it'd be just like working on a Model A. Anyway, but there are no controls, it's manually done, it's labor intensive, there's no audit, there's no history, it's a pain. So, let's automate. And how are we gonna do that? Well, I'm gonna take you through a few screenshots and kind of outline it for you. So I'm gonna show you from soup to nuts. Here's how we submit the change, we stage it, we approve it, and we push it. And what we're gonna need to do that is we need a request management tool. That can be Service Desk, it can be whatever you want. It can be a Excel spreadsheet, but my God, why? And then we need a tool that manages our project configuration. And look, my shirt says Adaptavist. I'm gonna tell you that Adaptavist's project configurator is obviously the best tool to use. It is, but there's others on the market. There's Botron and more that can do the job. And then we get an automation device, such as Adaptavist Script Runner, to actually push our changes. And now we're able to control it. So a little bit about Project Configurator. This has been around in the marketplace since 2013. It became part of the Adaptavist family in 2017. It is not, so Project Configurator in a nutshell can take Jira A and make Jira B look just like Jira A, right? But what a lot of people don't know about it is that it also is able to spit out a config file that I can then drop into my version control system. And that's one of the big things that helps us maintain our auditability, right? Project Configurator also supports all the flavors of Jira, as I am dutifully blocking. Script Runner, do we know we're good on Script Runner? Everybody loves Groovy, right? We love scripting. We love Adaptavist Script Runner, yeah. Also available on all flavors. It's real popular and real awesome. All right, so we begin with the change request. Oh, sorry. We see that, God, I gotta talk with Nelson about screenshots. Nelson's, can anyone even read this? Okay, that's good, that's good. Nelson's requesting something. He needs a new issue type, a new queue, and needs a new SLA. And here's his business case, and William's gonna approve it. I would tell William not to, just on the quality of this screenshot. And so what we do is, in our staging, we create the new request type, we create the new SLA, we add the queue. On our target system, we got none of that. The queue's not there. The issue type and the request type is not there, and neither is the queue. Well, we go through, we create the configuration change, right? Here's our service request, we submit, we promote it, we get it approved. We actually have it here with a script on our workflow function, where after it's approved, it gets pushed. And then we're gonna see this nice green success message. Yeah, everything got done. This can be dumped automatically into Confluence, so we have another record of our changes. And then afterwards, our queue shows up, our issue type is there, and our new SLA. Oh, try to contain yourselves, guys. Really. All right, so, in summary, and I do thank you, I don't want to take up too much of your time, I'm already at 20 minutes, amazingly. Configuration change management in Jira needs strong governance and change control. If you can move on to saving your configuration as code, it's a great way to ensure auditability and differentials. And then make sure that we're promotion controlling. There should be an approval before it hits your production instance. There should be an owner of this. Who's in charge? Who's documenting? And look, everything changes. So be ready for those changes and be ready to document when changes come. And lastly, automation, because then you can remove the human mistake element. Not that any of you would make a mistake. I know you're all very, very competent and good looking. But we want to make sure that we are making the changes in the most successful and efficient way possible. All right, so if you would like some references, come talk to me, because I'm sure all of you are writing these down manically right now. I see the pens flying, I see the sweat. All right, well that's me. Thank you all so much. Let's have a good time tonight. Greg?